Being able to see a subset of data on another record in a succinct summary mini table is magical. Welcome to Quickbase Junkie. I help Quickbase builders learn fast to deliver more. For this demo, I'm using the CRM Starter app from the App Exchange if you want to do something similar and follow along. For this particular demo, we're going to be focused on two different tables. Let me show you the app diagram. We'll be focused on the accounts table. This is where we want to see that mini query table. That mini query table will be records from the activities table, which does not have any direct connection to the account table itself, which is why we will be using a query. I'll head over into our activities. I believe the default download of this Exchange app does not have any data on the activities table, so I have seeded this with just a bunch of sort of random tasks, making sure to show some are past due. We'll be pulling those past due tasks up onto that account report so we can see immediately what tasks need our attention. To get started, I'll head into the fields and we will create a new field. I'll simply call this our activity summary. This will be a text formula field. It could also be a rich text formula field, but technically we don't need it to be rich text because we'll be displaying it as rich text once we get up onto that account table. I'll click add. We'll head into that field to begin writing our formula. What we want to accomplish with this field is gathering a summary of activity data onto an HTML table row. To do that, we're going to use a little bit of HTML. I'll walk you through it, so no need to worry. We'll start with the table row tag, which is included between these two angle brackets with the TR, table row. And we'll join that to our tags for table data. Think about this as the cell. So we define the row, and now we can start defining each cell that is on that row. So our first set of table data, let's go with the type of activity, include that type, and then we'll join that to the ending tag. Same table data, only we have that / in front of it. So now we've defined the opening of the row and the first data. I'll also include the due date and status, and those are going to be real similar. I'll just copy those in and change this to due date and status. And we'll have one more, and this will be our assigned to. Now the assigned to field is a user field. User fields actually contain multiple values. They have the user's email address, their user ID, as well as their username. So Quickbase will want us to say which of those do you actually want. So we want to display the name. So we'll use the user to name conversion function. And I like to show that as first name first with the little FF. And last, we need to tell the browser that this is the end of the row. Similar to the end of each set of table data, we will include that / with the TR. And that's it. We've now defined our activity summary row that we will pull up onto the account using our query formula. I'll save that, but before I leave, I want to make note of a couple of field IDs. So the field I just created is field ID 28. I'll also need to know what field has the due date, which is field ID 15, and where I can relate that account to. So in this particular app, the account key field is the account name. It is not the record ID. So in that case, I can grab the related opportunity account field, which is 23. All right, so we got 28, 23, and 15. Heading now to our account table, we'll create that new field, a summary of past due activities. And this will need to be a formula-rich text field. We'll begin by defining our query. If you have not written a query formula before, I highly recommend checking out the Oh So Fantastic Formula Queries video, as well as Query Writing 101, because I really won't get into a lot of detail about how to set up queries here. We'll simply write this one for this particular app. We'll start by defining the variable. I typically write these just, setting the variable of text equal to query. Our query is a text string that is comprised within a set of curly brackets. We'll want to pull in our first criteria to match on. So if you recall, we had field ID 23 was our account name. We want to set that equal to single quote, double quote, ampersand, and the company, which is the name, the company name field, or the key field in this account table. Join that to another single quote to close out that query string. Just in case the company name has a space in it, those single quotes make sure that nothing breaks on those spaces. But we also want to include the due date filter in this query. So we'll join it with an and then our second query. Our second query here will be on the field ID 15. And we want to say 15 or the due date is less than today, meaning that the due date has passed. Now, it just so happens we can use query definitions like today and yesterday. There's a whole list of them that Quickbase provides. You could also include a reference to a date field or even the today function in this place if you so chose. Close out our variable. The first thing I want to do before even getting into our official formula is check how many records is this query bringing back. Set up another variable. We want the size of the records that come back in this query. But we need to also define where to query because it's not on the same table as the account table that we're on now where we're writing the formula. So I need to include the DB ID or the table alias for our activity table. Let me jump over there real quick. Just open that in another tab. On my activities table, I can look in the advanced settings, scroll all the way to the bottom, and I can pull that table alias, which is really the best option to use inside of our formula. Head back to the formula, and then in a set of square brackets, pop in that table alias. This will give us the total count of records returned with that query from the activities table. So now we can begin our formula. If that number is greater than 0, then we'll proceed. It's important to define whether or not there's any information because the first thing we're going to include here is a little table header for our mini query table. And we don't want a bunch of headers with no data, so we have that initial if statement. Before getting into that first row, let's define our table itself. Going back to the HTML, we're going to have a lot of text strings and tags. This first tag is going to be the table tag. This simply says we are now defining a table. After that, we can set our initial set of rows. These rows are going to be similar to what we wrote before. So I will actually go back into the activities table, open that field we created earlier, copy this. I like shortcuts. Paste it in. So we've opened the table, opened a row, but now each of these rows are going to be our header. So I'll actually remove a bunch of this and just keep the text. I've got type, due date, status assigned to, and then the closing of that row. Perfect. So that now sets our header that will start our table. Next, we want to include all of those rows that match that past due criteria from our query. We'll use several additional query functions, get field values for those get records. I'll expand this a little bit. So where we previously used size and that gave us a numerical count, the get field values will get the actual values of a field that we specify. This will be our summary field and display them almost like a multi-select text type field. We'll use this same query from the activities table. Get that in there. Only we also need to define what the field is, and that was field ID 28. That was our new summary field that we created. We have to do a few more manipulations here to get exactly what we want. As I said, this comes through almost like a multi-select text type field, and we really just need it to be text. So I'll add in the toText function, And in addition to that, when you've got multiple fields together, Quickbase will put a semicolon, actually space, semicolon, space in between each of them, and we don't want that coming through either. So I'll do a little search and replace on what comes back through that query that's been converted to text for space, semicolon, space, and simply a blank text string in return, which is just double quotes. Now that defines all of those rows. It seems a little crazy, but this will create a dynamic set of rows based on whatever comes back from that query. So now all we have left to do is close out our table and end our if statement. There will be some additional formatting that we want to apply to this, but for now, let's look at the results. Head out, head to my accounts table. Now let's add this to the default, our summary of past due activities, and save. Now we've got a table, but it doesn't look the best. Let me expand this. That looks a little bit better in case you're not aware. You can drag and move these columns around. Now this will change the column width for just yourself, but it can be helpful to viewing data. So we probably want to add in here a little bit of extra space, maybe some coloring, other formatting to get this to look a little bit better, add some borders, that type of thing. So I will do that now. Within this table tag, we can add some different style elements. There's one called rules. Think of this as like a horizontal rule, vertical rule. These are the borders that go inside the table. Let's set this to the rows. So we have each row has a border. Add a little cell padding. This is how much space is between all of the letters and the borders. Give it a little bit of room to breathe. Remove any cell spacing and add a border around the entire table. If you're not particularly comfortable with HTML, I would really encourage learning some because they can be super powerful in these formulas. I have a course called the HTML Formula Crash Course for Quickbase that is all about learning HTML for Quickbase and will really help you understand a lot of the nuances and details for using HTML in Quickbase. Let's look at the results so far. Much better. Now we can start to be able to read this a little bit clearer. One thing you might be wondering is why I took this approach is there might be more direct paths to adding these borders. If you notice, the actual table that our mini table is on is missing the border off here on the right. And there's something about it that will actually impact your mini table and that this right border will go missing. But the method that I've used here enables that right border to remain. Let's add a little bit of a header color. Throw some color in here. Love adding color. We want to add that to our table row, right? That top row, we're going to give it a style. And with that background, let's make it blue, but then also change the font color to white. I'll click save. Boom. There we go. A beautiful mini table showing us all those past due activities. These happen to be only past due for Boeing. Looks like GE and IBM does not have any past due at this time, but as soon as they do, they'll pop up on here with the table header and their data. One thing important to keep in mind when using these query formulas, if you have very large data sets, these may not display. I believe Quickbase will give you a warning as you try to save the formula telling you that the query would take too long to actually render. Second thing to note, you would not want to export this. This is an HTML table. So exporting it into Excel, you're going to see all those ugly HTML tags, which you probably don't want to see. For more information about queries, query formulas, writing queries, check out those two videos, the oh so fantastic formula query functions and the query writing 101, as well as that HTML formula crash course. I talk about using tables. I talk about using HTML in so many amazing dynamic ways in Quickbase. Be sure to check it out. If you liked this video, there's a whole lot more going on over at quickbasejunkie.com/training. And when you're ready, I'll see you in the first lesson. If you found this video helpful, let me know. Hit the like button and subscribe to the channel. Bye for now.